Hi, welcome to Local Matters. I'm your host, Ken Moore. We have, elections are coming in May. We have 4 school board seats that are open, and 3 of them are contested, and I'm interviewing the 6 candidates that are running for those 3 seats. If you miss any of these interviews, you can Google Ken Moore Local Matters, and I have a YouTube page, and you can find all the interviews there and review those as you want to. But today I have with me Bill Bordeaux. Bill, thanks for being with me.
Thank you. It's
And
a pleasure to be here.
one thing I just like people to know about you is the experience you bring to the table. 40 years as a school teacher. 40 years
40 years in McMinnville.
in McMinnville as a school teacher.
Right.
Well, thank you for that. So you're running for the school board. Why are you running?
I'm running for the kids and for education. I firmly believe that democracy is built upon an educated electorate, not to mention the fact that it's good for people generally and for their economic betterment.
All right. So you've stepped up to, you've seen a lot of history here, and you've seen it change for the better, for the worse. Tell me about that.
I think it's been fairly consistent within McMinnville that they want to project an image as being a top school district, and that's been an ongoing effort. But I have seen public education change for the worse in the past 20, 25 years. And I'm very concerned about that. We're reaching a point of crisis. Fortunately, all across the land, there's a response to that, and there's a movement to get us out of the situation we're in presently.
Well, let's back up then. Let's go back to where you feel perhaps that things started changing and not for the better.
I believe the emphasis was mainly around the effort and the promotion of education 21st century, and that was around 1995, and it was some people outside of education, mainly business interests, that thought we needed to go in a different direction. In Oregon, it saw its effect principally through Vera Katz, who was in the legislature at that time, and there was notification around the world that Japan's economy was surpassing the United States. And this was of great concern to many people, and it sure was for Vera. And she felt that we needed to alter our education system to mirror or replicate what Japan was doing, and so she was a moving force for that in the legislature before she left and became mayor of Portland.
And what direction did that take? How did you see that in your classroom? How did that change?
We saw it in our classroom in the way of the way things were tested, the way things were promoted, even in some of the teaching techniques that they wanted us to employ, and we moved from one new magic cure to another. We had student portfolios, we had district icons that the kids had to pass. We moved through 3 different sets of testing methodologies.
Can you think of some of those names? Remind us what some of those names that we've heard.
The first set was Oregon testing, which at least that's how it was described. I don't know exactly how it was developed, and we tried that for about 7, 8 years. That was abandoned, and we went to Oaks testing, which was something brought in from outside of Oregon, and that was to be the tracking device for the future for Oregon. We abandoned that this year, last year, depending on the district, and we are now moving to the Smarter Balanced Assessment, SBAC. Don't be fooled by the name. It's neither smarter nor balanced, but that's what the new predictor for the future for education is all wrapped up in this test.
So these tests are to try to assess how we're doing in education. And
well,
go ahead.
Yeah, in general, they're supposed to assess how the district is doing, how the kids are doing, how their teachers are doing, and to be able to have a statistical reporting document to reveal to the outside public.
Did you feel like there was a system that was just about right in doing that, of those three that you've mentioned, or have you not hit
None
it?
of those have achieved those goals. And the prior two, I think by their own example, have shown that. We tried the Oregon testing, and why are we not doing the Oregon testing? Because it failed.
Okay.
Why are we not continuing the Oaks testing? Because it failed. The SBAC is on the way out before it's even getting started, and yet it's supposed to be the next measure for the next generations of Oregon students. But it already is catching flack and is rapidly falling out of favor.
Well, I'm curious, we've got three swipes at this, all different, all not giving the results that you feel it should. What are some elements of a testing system that would deliver what we need?
Well, part of it is the way you assess. The United States gives more tests than any other nation. Canada, for example, tests their third graders and their sixth graders only. Finland, who's now considered to have the best school system in the world, they test every other year or so, and they test samples. They don't test all their kids, they test samples. And the object of those tests, similar to the way we used to test, was to give you a general picture of how kids are doing, how the education's doing, how they're doing in reading, math, science, and so on, and to give you a barometer of how things are going. They were never used to test an individual kid and track them. They were never intended to be used to sanction teachers or to say that they're not doing their job. They were an overall snapshot of a state or a nation, because many of the states, like when I went through school, we took the Iowa tests, and they were developed in Iowa, and that's why they're called the Iowa tests. And that's what I took all through my school career. And most of the states in our nation used that test. So we had across the board identification as to how various places are doing at different grade levels, at different states, at different communities, and that was the general test. The other testing was done in the classroom. Teachers gave tests for their given subject to see how a child's doing, to see where there's weaknesses. A lot of these new testing devices are supposedly being used to evaluate, like we never did evaluations before. Teachers evaluate every day, every class, a lot of times every minute. Now, it's not something that we report out as data, but the teacher, being a professional, knows what's going on with their students in their class. And then occasionally at the end of a unit, you may have a formal pencil and paper test, which is not solely used to grade the student, but to see what's being picked up and what's not, where there's holes and deficits, and or what the teacher may need to do better to get that across. Because it's not our goal to have a bell-shaped curve, it's our goal for every kid to master everything they can.
Now, it's my understanding that there's three elements that are working together is currently what we're seeing, and that is that there are standards, Common Core, there's testing, Smarter Balance, and then there's a curriculum. And that curriculum is able to be chosen by the school district.
I believe so, although most of the school districts and the states who've adopted Common Core have accepted and adopted the Common Core curriculum materials that come with it.
I see. Okay. So how do you feel about the standards? Do you feel that these national standards are something that are valuable to test against?
I do, and again, the message being delivered is that we haven't had standards before. We've always had standards. There's always been state standards, local standards, national standards. there's always been a curriculum. There's always been a common curriculum. The current one just has the name, the Common Core Curriculum. And so that's always been around, but it's being put up that this is something new, that this is something being injected into education. It's not. It's always been there. It's always been part of what education is all about. And if you think about it, that's what you need. You've got to have standards. You've got to have goals that you're shooting for. You've got to have levels that students can achieve at their grade level, at their age level, at their brain maturity level, and that's always been there.
Bill, what I'm getting from you is that the standards idea is valid, the idea of a curriculum is a good one, but that middle piece, the testing piece seems to be the part that has come...
Well, the testing has gone berserk, and the curriculum part depends on what you choose for curriculum.
Of course.
And before, districts and or teachers selected curriculum, or committees of teachers. Now, under the Common Core, we're being having curriculum being imposed on us. And I've seen enough of this curriculum to assess it as garbage. And so I'm not in favor of the current curricula. I'm not in favor of the current testing process, the high-stakes testing process. The standards are pretty much the same as they've always been. They may be phrased differently. We've gone through, especially since 1995, we've gone through multiple different standards adjustments, but most of those have been done by teachers. This Common Core was not put together by teachers. The curriculum was not being put together by teachers, and the testing was put together by Pearson Testing Company, not necessarily with any teachers involved at all. And so we see the evidence and the results of this, and that is that the stuff is horrible.
Say you're elected to the school board. You're walking into a situation that seems to me that they're pretty much agreed on moving forward with this program. How do you feel you'll be able to affect the mix there?
How do I feel?
You'll be able to affect the situation in our school district.
I plan to shine some light on it. I plan to talk to fellow board members, and it's going to be my undisguised goal to convince them to move away from this, as is happening all over the nation. We have 12 states who have abandoned Common Core. They're moving away from it. We have multiple states and vicinities that are trying to move away from Smarter Balanced Test. I just came back from Washington, D.C. last week and had the privilege of sitting in on a Senate Education Committee, subcommittee of the Finance Committee, the Money Committee, and they happened to have Arnie Duncan as their witness, the Chief Education Officer of the nation. He was unable to answer almost all of their questions and concerns. I also learned that the Senate, the legislature, the federal legislature is looking at having a 2 or 4 or 6 year sunsetting of Smarter Balanced. So they've got the message that this is not the test for the future. I spoke with both Senator Merkley and Senator Warren, as well as it was brought out again at this Senate hearing that Patty Murray, our senator from Washington, is co-working, co-sponsoring a change to national No Child Left Behind, because they now understand that it was a horrible bill and that high stakes testing is horrible. Senator Merkley said shaming of schools is not a way to solve this problem, and it's never been the case that it has been.
Well, Bill, we've taken on a big subject, excuse me, in for 15 minutes, but the 15 minutes is up.
I realized that, and
so
I realized when
appreciate-
we started that I could talk for 15 minutes on any one of the questions that you talked about.
I so appreciate you coming here today and for offering a clear choice in this race. And there's been a lot to think about here you've put across the table today, and thank you very
I
much.
appreciate it.
All right. For Local Matters, that's it for today. Join us again for another interview with our local school board candidates.